They are often called distant, strange, or detached. But what if their silence is not indifference, and their withdrawal not arrogance, but something sacred, something profoundly misunderstood by those still entangled in the noise of the world? The awakened do not reject life. They simply see through it. And once the illusion dissolves, it becomes impossible to play the same games, chase the same shadows, or pretend the masks are real. Imagine a person who has seen the ocean after living their whole life in a puddle. How could they explain the depth, the vastness, the infinite horizon to those still splashing in shallow waters? The more they try, the more they are met with confusion or even hostility. The awakened are not misunderstood because they hide the truth, but because the truth they live cannot be spoken, only experienced. Alan Watts once said that awakening is not about becoming something new, but about remembering what has always been. It is a profound shift from seeking meaning to realizing you are meaning itself. And in that realization, the frantic race of the world begins to look like a dream. Beautiful, yes, but fleeting and unreal. Those who still sleep cannot understand why the awakened no longer run. But here lies the paradox. The awakened love the world more deeply than ever before, yet they no longer cling to it. They laugh at its seriousness, weep at its beauty, and walk through it as one might move through a story already read, cherishing every page, yet knowing how it ends. Their distance is not coldness, but clarity, not judgment, but peace. So before labeling them as lost, aloof, or strange, look closer. Perhaps what you see as withdrawal is simply rest, a soul returning home after lifetimes of wandering. For to awaken is to step out of the storm, not in defiance of the world, but in harmony with it. And that calm, that silence, is what so many mistake for being misunderstood. To understand why the awakened are so often misunderstood, we must first explore what it truly means to awaken. Awakening is not a sudden explosion of enlightenment that separates one from humanity. It is a gentle dissolving of illusions, a quiet seeing of things as they are. The awakened individual begins to perceive the world not through the lens of ambition or fear, but through awareness itself, an awareness that watches the play of life without clinging to the roles within it. And when this shift occurs, everything that once seemed urgent begins to lose its weight. The noise of comparison, competition, and approval fades into the background, and what remains is stillness, unsettling to some, but profoundly liberating to the one who sees. Alan Watts often compared this realization to waking from a dream. In the dream, everything feels real, the struggles, the desires, the victories and losses. But once you awaken, you see that it was all part of a single dance, a play of consciousness pretending to be separate. When one awakens within the world, the same happens. Life continues, but now it is transparent. The awakened person still eats, speaks, loves, and laughs, but no longer mistakes the passing for the permanent. To those still asleep in the drama, this detachment seems cold or disinterested, when in truth, it is the deepest form of compassion, born from seeing the futility of suffering overshadows. This new vision creates a kind of distance that many cannot understand. It is not that the awakened reject people. They simply stop trying to control or fix them. They no longer seek validation or agreement, for they recognize that everyone is exactly where they must be in their journey. This surrender to the flow of life appears strange in a world obsessed with control. To those still striving, the awakened seem to have given up, but what they have actually done is give in, not to defeat but to truth. And in that surrender, they find an effortless harmony with the unfolding of existence. There is also a certain loneliness in awakening, not because the awakened are truly alone, but because few can meet them where they now stand. They no longer speak in terms of goals and achievements, but of being and presence. They no longer define themselves by identity or belief, but by awareness itself. This can make conversations with the unawakened feel hollow, as if one were trying to describe silence to those who have never stopped speaking. It is not superiority that keeps them apart. It is depth. The awakened see life as a river flowing through all things, while most still believe they are the riverbank. Yet, despite the misunderstanding, the awakened remain tender toward the world. They do not condemn the dreamers. They bless them. They understand that the dream is necessary. It is through illusion that truth is rediscovered. So they walk among the sleeping with compassion, not judgment. They know that awakening cannot be forced. It ripens like fruit in its own time. And so they live quietly, gracefully, sometimes hidden in plain sight, misunderstood not because they are different, but because they have stopped pretending. As the awakened move through life, they encounter the great paradox of existence. They are both the actor and the observer, the wave and the ocean. This awareness changes everything. To most, life is a series of events. Things happen to them. But to the awakened, life is happening as them. They see that the wind, the rain, the laughter of children, and even the pain of loss are all expressions of the same source, playing infinite forms. This realization brings a serenity that the world often mistakes for indifference. When you no longer resist what is, you no longer suffer in the same way, and those still trapped in resistance cannot comprehend that peace without struggle can exist. Alan Watts spoke often about the folly of trying to get enlightenment. He said it's like trying to bite your own teeth. The more you chase it, the further it goes. The awakened understand this deeply. They no longer seek truth as an object to possess, because they've realized they were never separate from it. This understanding frees them from the endless seeking that defines so much of human life. To many, this looks like passivity, as if they've lost ambition or drive. But the truth is far more beautiful. They act without anxiety, create without attachment, and love without fear of loss. Their doing flows from being, not from need. It is this effortless state that unsettles those still striving. In a world built upon becoming, the one who simply is becomes a mirror that exposes the madness of constant pursuit. People sense this, and it disturbs them. They cannot understand how someone can live without chasing, without needing a purpose defined by others. The awakened embody a freedom that feels dangerous to the ego, because it threatens the illusion that identity and achievement are what make one real. And so, the awakened are labeled strange, unmotivated, even lost, not because they have lost their way, but because they have stepped off the map altogether. The irony, of course, is that in their apparent withdrawal, the awakened are more present than ever. While most people live in fragments, their minds pulled between the past and the future, the awakened rest entirely in the now. They taste life fully in each breath, each sound, each passing moment. They know that life is not something to reach, but something to notice. And in that noticing, everything becomes sacred. The mundane turns to miracle, and the smallest act, a smile, a breeze, a single step, becomes an expression of the divine. Still, this way of being can be deeply misunderstood by those who equate stillness with stagnation. They do not see that the awakened are not running from life, but flowing with it. They are not indifferent. They are free. They do not resist the world. They dance with it. But to the eyes that see only movement, the still dancer looks invisible. And that invisibility is the price of peace, a quiet anonymity that the ego cannot endure, but the soul celebrates. The awakened do not seek to be seen. They have become the seeing itself. To live awakened is to exist in a world that worships noise while finding beauty in silence. The awakened no longer chase the echo of approval because they've touched the source of being itself. They see that everything, the chaos, the order, the joy, and the sorrow, is part of one eternal rhythm. To them, life is not a problem to be solved, but a song to be heard. Yet those who are still asleep cannot hear this melody. They only hear the static of their own desires. When someone lives without fear, without needing to control outcomes, it challenges the very fabric of collective illusion. And so, the awakened are met not with understanding, but with suspicion, because freedom frightens those who still live in cages they call comfort. Alan Watts often reminded us that the game of life is not meant to be won, but to be played. The awakened remember this. They are no longer seduced by the seriousness of existence. They laugh easily, forgive quickly, and rarely hold on to offense, because they see through the temporary roles people play. This laughter, this lightness, is often seen as irresponsibility by those who equate suffering with sincerity. But in truth, the awakened have simply discovered that joy is not something earned through struggle. It is the natural fragrance of awareness. And to those who have forgotten how to be still, such joy appears unnatural, even threatening. This misunderstanding grows when the awakened speak of unity. They say, "There is no me in you, only the dance of life expressing itself." But to the mind conditioned to separation, this sounds absurd. The ego thrives on division. It survives by drawing boundaries between self and other. The awakened, however, have seen through that illusion. They recognize that the self is not an isolated entity trapped in a body, but a wave upon the ocean of consciousness. Every person, every leaf, every heartbeat, all are the same being, wearing different faces. This truth cannot be grasped by intellect alone. It must be felt. And when it is, the illusion of conflict dissolves into a profound sense of belonging. Still, in a society driven by individualism, those who see unity appear to have lost their identity. People fear that without their story, they will disappear. But the awakened know that this disappearance is liberation, not death. To lose the false self is to rediscover the infinite. It is like the drop of water that trembles before merging with the sea, not realizing that it was the sea all along. This realization brings a peace so vast that words fail to describe it. And because it cannot be expressed, the awakened often remains silent, speaking only when silence itself takes form in words. To the unawakened, this silence seems empty. But to the one who has seen, it is full of presence, full of being, full of the quiet hum of existence. The awakened withdraw not because they reject the world, but because they have found a deeper intimacy with it. They no longer need to speak about truth. They are truth in motion. Every glance, every breath, every moment becomes a sermon without words. And though few can hear it, those who do feel an inexplicable peace, as if they've touched something ancient and eternal, something beyond misunderstanding. One of the most profound challenges the awakened face is living among those who still believe the dream is real. They walk through cities filled with hurry, conversations built on comparison, and lives shaped by fear of insignificance. To the awakened, this appears like a grand play, beautifully tragic, endlessly repeating. Each actor forgetting their script is not who they truly are. They do not despise the play, nor mock its players. They simply see it for what it is, a divine drama unfolding in infinite variations. But to those still acting with full conviction, the one who steps backstage is seen as a deserter, someone who has abandoned the game. Alan Watts described awakening as waking up to the fact that you are the universe playing hide and seek with itself. The awakened have found the one hiding behind every face, including their own. This recognition shatters the illusion of separation, but also brings a strange ache, a longing to share what cannot be shared. They try, sometimes, to speak of it, to explain that love is not something to find, that freedom is not something to earn, that death itself is not an end but a return. But the words fall short, and those listening often hear madness instead of truth. The awakened smile, knowing the futility of trying to describe fire to those who have never felt warmth. This is why they withdraw, not out of superiority, but out of compassion. They know that every soul must find its own way out of the dream. To awaken too early, without understanding, can feel like being torn from sleep before the dawn, disorienting, even painful. And so the awakened wait. They wait with patience, loving in silence, guiding through presence rather than persuasion. They know that life itself is the teacher, and that no sermon can compete with the lessons of existence. Their stillness becomes a mirror in which others may glimpse themselves. But even mirrors are often feared. When someone stands before an awakened being, something in them begins to tremble. The false layers start to crack. It's not that the awakened expose others, but that their very being radiates a light that reveals what others hide. And while some are drawn to that light, others retreat from it because it threatens the comfortable illusion of who they think they are. Thus, misunderstanding becomes inevitable. Those who live in darkness often mistake illumination for judgment. Yet the awakened hold no resentment for this misunderstanding. They see that every reaction, even rejection, is part of the unfolding of consciousness. Just as a flower does not resent the bud for not yet blooming, the awakened do not resent those still asleep. They know that one day, perhaps in another lifetime or another breath, every being will awaken to the same truth. And when that moment comes, all the confusion, fear, and division will dissolve in a laughter, the laughter of remembering what was never lost. Those who awaken often discover that words are no longer enough. Language, once a tool for connection, becomes a veil that separates. For how can one describe the taste of infinity using syllables born from limitation? The awakened find themselves caught between two worlds, one where everything must be named, and another where naming dissolves the sacred. They still speak, of course, but now their words carry silence between them. Each phrase becomes a doorway, not a declaration. Yet, to those who have not yet tasted the stillness behind speech, this way of speaking feels vague, evasive, or strange. They ask for explanations, but the awakened offer only presence. And presence, in a world addicted to noise, is easily mistaken for emptiness. Alan Watts often reminded his listeners that the purpose of a teacher is not to hand over truth, but to make you see that you already have it. The awakened live this paradox daily. They no longer preach, they embody. They no longer argue, they simply are. Their very being becomes a living reminder that nothing needs to be added to what already is. But to the restless mind, this message is unbearable. It wants methods, rituals, guarantees, something to grasp. The awakened offer none of these, and thus are dismissed as unhelpful or aloof. Yet, in that very refusal lies their deepest compassion. They refuse to strengthen the illusion that awakening can be bought, earned, or taught. This misunderstanding often isolates them. They can be surrounded by people, yet feel unseen, not because others are blind, but because their eyes are fixed on form, while the awakened live in essence. They may be laughed at, ignored, or pitied by those who cannot imagine a life without striving. And still, they do not resist. They let the world move as it must. Like a mountain standing silent while clouds pass, they watch the storms come and go without fear of the thunder. For they know that even misunderstanding serves a purpose. It deepens humility, compassion, and detachment from the need to be understood at all. The awakened know that to demand understanding from the unawakened is like asking the ocean to explain itself to a wave. It cannot be done. The wave must fall back into the sea to know the truth of its own nature. And so, the awakened wait, not with impatience, but with the still joy of knowing that every wave, no matter how far it seems to travel, will one day return home. This is why they do not argue, do not defend, do not insist. Their peace does not depend on agreement. It flows from knowing that all misunderstanding is temporary, a cloud passing across an eternal sky. And beneath all this, there is love, vast, silent, and unconditional. The awakened love the world not because it is perfect, but because they see that even imperfection is part of perfection. They love the angry, the lost, the afraid, not for what they show, but for what they truly are beneath the disguise. They see themselves in every being, every cry, every heartbeat, and though the world may misunderstand them, they never misunderstand the world. They know that everything, even confusion, is sacred. The journey of the awakened is not one of escape, but of integration. Many believe that awakening means leaving behind the human experience, but the opposite is true. To awaken is to fall deeply in love with existence in all its rawness. Pain and joy are no longer opposites, but companions. The awakened feel everything more deeply, yet they're not bound by emotion. They experience sorrow, but without despair. They feel joy, but without clinging. To the world, this emotional balance appears strange, even robotic. But it is not numbness. It is the calm of one who has stopped fighting the tides and learned to float upon them. Alan Watts once said that to awaken is to realize that you and the universe are not two things, but one process. The awakened live this truth effortlessly. They see that life breathes through them, not apart from them. The wind moves through their lungs. The sunlight dances through their eyes. The universe sings through their thoughts. When they act, it is not them acting, but the totality moving in harmony. This is why their actions carry such grace. They're spontaneous, unforced, free of fear or agenda. But to those who still believe in control, this spontaneity looks careless, even dangerous. They cannot see that to let go is not to fall into chaos, but to fall into flow. This flow frightens the structure mind. Society teaches people to plan, to strive, to secure their future against uncertainty. But the awakened know that the future is an illusion, that only this moment ever truly exists. To them, security is not found in control, but in surrender. This way of living feels reckless to those who define safety by predictability. Yet, paradoxically, it is the awakened who are safest, for they no longer resist what life brings. Like bamboo bending in the wind, they do not break when storms come. They yield, they move, and in that movement they endure. Still, this surrender is not understood by most. People see the awakened as dreamers, too passive, too accepting. But what they fail to see is the immense strength it takes to yield. It is easy to fight. It is far harder to trust. The awakened have mastered trust, not as belief, but as being. They no longer ask, "What will happen to me?" because they know there is no separate me to protect. Life takes care of itself. And this realization, though invisible to most, is the ultimate liberation. Their misunderstood peace becomes their quiet rebellion. In a world that glorifies resistance, they embody surrender. In a society that worships control, they live as living proof that freedom is found in letting go. They become reminders that the current of life has always known the way, and that the only true misunderstanding is believing you are separate from it. To those still asleep, they appear to have vanished from the race. But in truth, they have stepped out of the illusion of running and begun to dance. The awakened person eventually discovers that even misunderstanding has a divine rhythm to it. To be misunderstood is not a curse, but a mirror, reflecting how truth meets the limits of perception. When the awakened speak of surrender, the world hears defeat. When they speak of unity, the world hears loss of identity. When they speak of death as transformation, the world hears tragedy. This is the veil through which wisdom must pass, and often it tears upon entry. The awakened learn to stop explaining, for explanation belongs to the realm of the mind, and awakening belongs to the realm of being. They understand that silence carries what words cannot, the vibration of truth unspoken. And so, they let their silence speak louder than their voice. Alan Watts often said that enlightenment is like laughter, spontaneous, ungraspable, and impossible to fake. Those who live from this awareness often find themselves laughing at the seriousness of life, not because they mock it, but because they see the cosmic play behind it. Every tragedy hides comedy, every loss hides birth, and every ending is but a disguise for continuation. To those still attached to form, such laughter seems cruel, almost heartless. But the awakened laugh from compassion, not mockery. They have seen that the divine hides behind every mask, and that even pain has its sacred purpose. Their joy is not shallow happiness. It is the profound peace of one who knows that nothing real can ever be lost. To the ordinary mind, this view appears impossible. How can one accept both suffering and beauty with equal grace? Yet, this is the essence of awakening, to embrace the paradox of existence. The awakened see that light needs darkness to be seen, that gain and loss are two sides of the same wave. They no longer divide life into good or bad, success or failure. They accept everything as part of the same unfolding, a vast and intelligent flow beyond human comprehension. And in that acceptance, they find a peace that no external force can shake. To the unawakened, this neutrality seems detached, but in truth, it is love in its purest form, love that no longer depends on conditions. Still, This understanding creates an invisible wall between the awakened and the world. They see others suffering, running in circles, seeking salvation in things that cannot last. Their hearts ache for them, yet they know that awakening cannot be given, only discovered. They walk among the crowd, unseen, sometimes smiling at the very illusions that once imprisoned them. Their eyes carry both sadness and serenity, sadness for the dream, serenity for the dreamer who will one day wake. And so, they live as quiet witnesses, blending into life, unseen teachers among the sleeping. Even when misunderstood, rejected, or mocked, the awakened remain untouched. Not because they are emotionless, but because they know that every judgment arises from fear. They do not fight it, they bless it. Every misunderstanding becomes another opportunity to love without reason, to forgive without expectation, to shine without needing recognition. For the awakened have ceased to seek meaning in being understood. They find meaning in understanding. And that understanding is infinite. As time passes, the awakened begin to disappear, not in body, but in identity. Their presence softens. Their ego dissolves like mist under morning light. They live simply, quietly, gracefully. They no longer strive to leave a mark upon the world, for they know the world itself is a mark left upon eternity. To them, there is no need to be remembered, for they have already merged with what is eternal. And yet, their very presence leaves an imprint, invisible but indelible, in the hearts of those who cross their path. A single glance, a few words, or even silence from them can alter the direction of another's life forever. Alan Watts spoke of this dissolution as the drop returning to the ocean. When you realize that you are never separate from the sea, the fear of death fades, and with it, the craving for recognition. The awakened do not seek legacy, they seek alignment. They live as instruments through which existence plays its song. Whether they are seen or ignored, praised or condemned, makes no difference. They have transcended the game of opposites. They know that fame and obscurity are equal in the eyes of the eternal, just as waves and still water are both the ocean expressing itself. This freedom, however, continues to confuse the unawakened. They ask, if nothing matters, why live? But to the awakened, everything matters because nothing needs to. Life becomes a dance of pure expression, unbound, spontaneous, radiant. They plant seeds without needing to see the flowers bloom. They give without asking who receives. They love without counting what is returned. To the sleeping world, this seems impractical, even naive. But to the awakened, it is the only way to live truly, to act not from desire, but from love itself. And so, they move through life like wind, touching everything, grasping nothing. They build no temples, yet every moment becomes sacred. They preach no doctrine, yet their being teaches all who are ready to hear. Even their absence speaks, even their silence heals. They are misunderstood because they live without contradiction, and the world is built upon it. They are seen as distant because they are everywhere, and everywhere they go, they leave peace in their wake. The awakened do not seek to change the world. They reveal that it was never broken. Their misunderstood stillness is the heartbeat of existence itself. They live, love, and eventually vanish into the great silence from which they came. And when they are gone, the world continues its noise, unaware that, for a brief moment, it was graced by someone who remembered what we all once knew. That awakening is not an escape from life, but the purest way of being alive. To the awakened, misunderstanding is not a burden. It is part of the great design. They see that even confusion has its sacred role, for without misunderstanding, there would be no journey toward clarity. They recognize that the human mind must first misinterpret truth before it can dissolve into it. And so, the awakened no longer try to correct the world's perception of them. They allow people to think what they must, for every perspective is a reflection of the perceiver, not the perceived. This deep acceptance frees them from the endless need to defend, explain, or justify their existence. Their peace becomes unconditional, untouched by opinion or approval. Alan Watts once said, You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at itself. The awakened live this truth every moment. They understand that every thought, every heartbeat, every emotion is the universe knowing itself in yet another form. This realization strips away all pretension. There is no longer my life. There is only life expressing itself through this temporary pattern of form and energy. From that vantage point, even being misunderstood becomes beautiful, for it reminds them that life is infinite in its expressions, and that not all are meant to see the same horizon at once. This understanding gives them an unshakable compassion. They look at the world, with its wars, arguments, ambitions, and sorrows, not with judgment, but with tenderness. They know that all of it is part of awakening's slow unfolding. Every struggle is consciousness trying to remember itself. Every conflict, a soul reaching for its reflection. And so, the awakened carry an invisible love that stretches far beyond personal affection. They love the world not because it is easy to love, but because they see themselves in it, the light and the shadow alike. Yet, this compassion is often mistaken for passivity. The awakened may not protest loudly or argue for ideals, but their stillness is not silence. It is power. They act when action arises naturally, without ego or resistance. Their movements are aligned with something vast, something that does not seek recognition. In their quiet way, they transform everything they touch. Like a breeze shaping the dunes, they alter the world without leaving visible footprints. But because their work is subtle, society rarely recognizes it. And that, too, is perfect. For the awakened, the need to be seen has dissolved, replaced by the joy of simply being. They know that life itself is watching, that existence itself bears witness. There is no loneliness in their solitude, no pride in their understanding. They live in harmony with the great mystery, content to be a small note in the eternal song. And even as the world misunderstands them, they continue to smile, not out of defiance, but out of love for the dream that is still unfolding toward its awakening. There comes a point in every awakened life when words, teachings, and even philosophies fall away entirely. What remains is direct experience, raw, immediate, indescribable. At this stage, even Alan Watts' teachings become a bridge that has served its purpose. The awakened no longer seek to understand life. They have become one with its pulse. The separation between observer and observed collapses. They do not watch the river flow. They are the river, endlessly moving yet perfectly still. To those who see them, this quiet depth feels unexplainable, a mystery wrapped in simplicity. They may live ordinary lives, walking dogs, washing dishes, sitting in silence. Yet, within them, eternity breathes. Their presence transforms the air around them, not through effort, but through vibration. People who come near them feel calmer, lighter, more at ease, without knowing why. The awakened do not heal through words. They heal through being. Their peace radiates in silence, and that silence becomes contagious. But again, this is misunderstood. The world wants teachers to speak, to lead, to instruct. The awakened prefer to dissolve. They understand that truth cannot be captured. It can only be transmitted through stillness. To them, misunderstanding is simply a ripple in the ocean of existence. They no longer take offense when others project upon them, for they know projection is how the mind defends itself against what it does not yet understand. Every criticism, every doubt, every label, it all returns to the source and disappears. The awakened no longer swim against the current of perception. They allow it to flow around them. They live as water does, transparent, adaptable, and unstoppable. And in that effortless existence, they teach more than any sermon could. In the end, the awakened no longer see themselves as awakened. The very idea of being enlightened dissolves into the vastness of what is. They see that the search for awakening was just another mask, another game consciousness played to rediscover itself. There is no finish line, no final state. There is only this breath, this moment, this awareness unfolding forever. They laugh softly at the irony. The ones who are most misunderstood are those who no longer need to be understood at all. And so, their story fades like incense in the wind. No monuments, no followers, no doctrines, just the quiet fragrance of truth lingering in the world. The awakened leave no trace, because they were never separate to begin with. They have returned to the place where all things meet, the silent center of existence. And perhaps that is why they are misunderstood, because they have become everything, and everything cannot be grasped. To understand them fully, one must awaken too. Perhaps the greatest irony of awakening is that the moment one truly understands, words become useless. The awakened do not seek to be seen, yet they become light for those still walking in the dark. They do not wish to lead, yet their quiet presence guides without effort. They do not wish to teach, yet their silence becomes the most profound lesson. And those who misunderstand them are, unknowingly, already being touched by their truth, because to question them, to wonder why they are different, is the first whisper of awakening itself. Alan Watts once said that the meaning of life is just to be alive. It sounds almost too simple, yet simplicity is the very essence of wisdom. The awakened have stopped chasing meaning because they have realized that existence is not a riddle to solve. It is a dance to join. Every heartbeat, every breath, every laugh and tear are part of that rhythm. And maybe that is why they appear strange to the world. Because while everyone else is trying to become, they have remembered how simply to be. So the next time you meet someone who seems withdrawn, quiet, or unconcerned with the things that most people obsess over, look deeper. Maybe they are not lost. Maybe they have found something you have yet to remember. Maybe their stillness is not distance, but depth. Maybe their detachment is not coldness, but peace. Behind their calm eyes might live the same truth waiting within you. That awakening is not a choice, but a remembering of what you have always been. If you allow that thought to rest within you, even for a moment, something begins to shift. The noise of the world softens. The constant need to prove, to win, to explain begins to fade. And in its place, you may feel what the awakened feel, that subtle, wordless connection to everything. The misunderstanding then dissolves. There is no us in them, no awake and asleep. There is only life, experiencing itself through infinite eyes. And if these words stirred something quiet inside you, that gentle recognition that cannot be explained, honor it. Let it unfold naturally, without rush or expectation. Stay here with this awareness. And if this message resonated with you, share it, not for numbers, but for connection. Subscribe to the channel, leave your reflection in the comments, and help this light reach others who might be ready to see beyond the veil. Because sometimes, all it takes to awaken is to hear the truth at the right moment and recognize that it was already yours.